clean up like hospital beds.
Mm-hmm.
So like if they like that's certified chilling. You using the internet right now?
Nope. Why?
Picking up some interference.
Oh, okay. Let me turn it off. I was just looking at my calendar.
Now it's gone.
Okay.
Here we are.
Alrighty.
Ross, Paper, Scissors, episode 7.
Did we start already?
Yeah, it's recording.
Oh, cool.
I usually just leave banter in there.
All right.
For whatever. I don't know.
Cool.
You could adjust this mic too. I don't know if this is good for you or not.
Yeah, it's good. Am I close enough?
I mean, you know the rules. I've seen you with a mic in your hand before.
Yeah. So a few times.
I do a lot in post with audio gain and interference too, because like this room echoes and you can hear everything. But I've gotten pretty good at it. I found this one type of special equalizer that I can pick out high-end background frequencies and pull them out. It's actually pretty cool. I learned.
Cool. I don't know what you just said, but that's awesome.
It's cool. That's for Aaron and Christopher Wrigley. They're
cool.
Gonna know what's up.
I love having them in my life because all I have to do is pick up the microphone and.
You sound great.
I don't know. Honestly, I need to get better at that because I feel like I don't want to be like the worship leader that doesn't know any tech stuff because I just feel like it's a stereotype.
Yeah. Well, even
girl.
like they ask me to do like video or whatever, and I'll go there every once in a while to help out. And then like before that, everyone's setting everything up, wiring everything, and running this XLR to blah blah blah. Like, I'm sure it's simple enough that I could figure. I'm running this whole podcast studio, like I know how it works. But like the bigger stuff with all the boards and all that, like I've never taken the time to learn. But I feel like I'm just standing around and like I'm like, all right, I'm gonna check this camera, see if this camera works.
So I actually know how to do XLRs. I learned. I mean, I haven't done it since we had load in, load out, but I learned.
Yeah, I'm sure I could figure it out, but I really haven't taken the time to figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm not there enough to do that. And that's okay. That's not an invitation to put me on every weekend. So, yes, here we are. Ross, Paper, Scissors, episode 7 with Ms. Kiele Hauser.
Yo.
Just a quick introduction. For starters, Kiele's extremely humble and modest and couldn't figure out what I could say to introduce her because she's like, I don't know.
It's so awkward.
I don't think I've done anything of note. I don't know. So I'm just going to, this is a list that I threw together. She is definitely a foodie. She calls herself a food snob, and that's something she's proud of.
Yeah.
She is a pastor at V1 Church. She's a preacher. She's a worship director. She's a life coach, a counselor, entrepreneur, a dreamer, lover of the outdoors, especially the beach.
Yeah, I love the beach.
And in case you're wondering, that is who Kiele is summed up in about 12 words.
Yeah, I do love the beach. I can say I was at the beach twice yesterday.
You go to the beach almost every day, don't
every
you?
day. No, I live and work at the beach at this point, so.
Yeah. But it's Long Beach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she walks out and the beach is right there.
Pretty much.
So
pretty much.
you do your morning devos or prayer or whatever, or just walk.
Exercise.
Just grab your coffee,
runs,
go outside.
Bike rides, depending on the day.
Oh, you got the boardwalk too, so
the boardwalk.
It's pretty clutch.
Yeah.
It's beautiful down there.
It's amazing. It's my happy place.
I'm really bad at directions. That was where we went. You weren't there. Never mind. We had went somewhere. We met up for hang out on the beach stuff.
With the young adults
V1
group?
youth,
Yeah.
Or young adults or whatever.
That was Long Beach.
Yeah. So that area is great. I'm really bad with knowing where I am.
Yeah.
Plus, I've been there 10 times and it's ingrained in me. I'm like, all right, now I'm here.
Well, you've been to my office a few times.
Yeah, no, it hasn't blended together for me yet. I've been there twice, and then I've been to that beach specifically. I've been there twice.
Okay,
but
so
4 times
we need
isn't
6
enough.
more times until you're...
Yeah, probably.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
On it.
Nicole brought me there for our anniversary one time. She got like a hotel room and...
At the Allegria? On the...
yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That was cool. That was like an interesting experience.
Why?
I wasn't really happy about it.
You weren't?
No.
Why?
Because it was a surprise.
You don't like surprises?
I'm not a fan of surprises, but like, here's the thing: surprises can be done very well.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna surprise me, it needs to be like a surprise where it's like something happens or I'm told something, like I'm okay with that. But when you're telling me that we're going somewhere and I'm not allowed to know where we're going and I can't prepare for where we're going. So she's like, oh, we're going to this place, but it's a surprise for our anniversary or our birthday, whatever it was. I don't remember what it was. And I'm like, all right, well, what should I wear? And she's like, oh, like you could wear this, but you could also wear this, and you should put on this, and you could also wear this. I'm like, all right, what kind of shoes should I wear? Like, do I need to wear like boots? Like, can I wear my dress shoes? Should I wear jeans? Should I wear shorts? Should I wear dress? And she's like scatterbrained about it. So she's like, oh, I mean, you could wear your jeans and sneakers. And I'm like, Nicole, I don't wear sneakers with jeans. I don't think it looks good. I either wear boots or dress shoes with jeans. She's like, oh, well, maybe you don't want to wear dress shoes but I can't really tell you why, but like you might want to. And I was just very distraught about the whole situation. So I had like this like minuscule anxiety leading up to it. And then we drove in my Jeep at the time that we had. She made me lay down in the back seat with a blindfold on.
Oh, no, I don't like that. That's creepy.
And it's a far drive. And we drove all the way from wherever we were at the time. I think that was a couple years ago. I think we lived in Center Reach at the time. So I drove over an hour laying down in the backseat with a blindfold on my face. I couldn't look at my phone because then I could see the things around. I'm like, yo, I swear. And then we showed up at a restaurant in Long Beach. And the restaurant was like super mediocre, if I recall. So I was pretty upset about that.
Right.
I said, this better not have been the surprise because this was terrible.
Do you remember the restaurant?
It was like a Spanish fusion type place where they had like Spanish food, but then like also other things. It was weird. Like duck wontons and
Oh,
like
that's strange.
whatever.
I don't know that restaurant. Sounds weird.
It was like on that strip though, like by your office where like you park in the middle and then, and there's stuff on either side. And then we went there and then I was like, that better not have been the surprise. And she's like, no, get back in the car and like lay down. But I'm like, dude, I'm not doing this again. Like, what is going on? Where are we going? And then we like showed up and she's like, all right, you can open your eyes. But like, we're just like in the parking lot. And I'm like, what the F?
What are we doing here?
What are we doing? She's like, oh, I got us a night stay here. And I was like, wow.
But did you enjoy it once you were in there? No?
Really. I didn't prepare for an overnight stay.
She didn't pack a bag for you?
She did, but she's not packing the things that I want to pack. Like, I want to bring my computer and, like, stuff, whatever.
Why do you want your computer for an romantic
Because I had
overnight
planned
stay?
on doing things on my computer that night, and she was like, no, I have a surprise for you. Let's get in the car and get dressed, do this thing.
Oh,
So
man.
all my plans that I put for myself got thrown out the window. I guess my fault for not telling her what my plans were. But like I was like, I'm gonna go home and do this thing on the whatever, and then I didn't get to do any of it. And she knew it. Like as soon as we got there, she's like, "You're not upset, are you?" And I'm like,
oh, Ross, you got to put on a better game face than that.
"Yeah, no, it wasn't a good time."
It's such a nice hotel. The views are amazing.
And the hotel itself was like super modern. It was really cool inside. Everything
Yeah,
about
I've been
it.
there several times.
Yeah, it was cool, but like she'll never do that again.
Yeah. Yeah. That sucks though.
Yeah. What can I tell you?
What? So you don't like it when your plans get messed up?
No.
Because your head, like your mind doesn't compute to the change?
To me, it was like, and it wasn't, if I recall, I may be wrong. Nicole's going to listen to this and call me out either way. But if I recall, it wasn't even like a weekend or anything. It was like a weekday.
Oh, so you had to go to work?
No. It might have been like a Friday or something, but it was like after work. So I had like finished after work. I had plans to do something after work. And then it's like, you can't do any of those things, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I felt like I just lost my Friday night of doing the things that I wanted to do because we didn't communicate about it. I mean, it's on both of us, I guess.
Yeah.
Being responsible. I got to watch what I say around you.
It's a good marriage tip.
Yeah.
Why? Because I'm going to use it in sessions.
So for those of you listening, Kiele is my therapist. No, I'm just kidding. She's not a therapist, but she is a counselor, life coach. Yeah. She's absolutely fantastic. EI Solutions. I'm sure we'll get into that.
Thanks, man.
So let's start with this for people who don't know, or even I guess people that do know you, but maybe not all the backstory. Well, who is Kiele Hauser? Where'd you come from? How'd you grow up? What led you to where you are now?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I've thought about it in that way for a long time, but My parents found Jesus when I was 11. And
You grew up on Long Island, right?
Yep. And I actually had been going every year with my cousins to VBS. And for those of you that don't know what VBS is, it's a vacation Bible school. And it's for kids. It's usually like a week or two long in the summers. It's like a camp, essentially. And you learn cute songs. Like I remember, can I sing one?
Go for it.
There was one it was about fruits. It was, you're a peach of a savior, you're the apple of my eye. I go stomping through the vineyard where the grapes are growing high. You're so plum wonderful, and that's the reason why I just go bananas for my Lord.
I mean, it stuck with you. You still remember
I was
it.
8 when I learned that song,
Wow.
probably. Yeah. So I was like, hey, can we go to my, cousin Andrea's church? Because it's so cool. And I had so much fun there.
Yeah.
And my parents went once and they like really encountered Jesus and they decided they were never leaving. And eventually my father became a pastor there. And they recently left there a couple of years ago. There was some big transitions, but I think they were there like 20. I'm not going to tell you how many because then you'll know how old I am, but 20 something years. And so I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional family system, but I grew up really believing and knowing that I had a call of the Lord on my life. So by the time I was like 17 or 18, I knew that I was called to ministry in some form. And by 20, I had started getting like dreams and prophetic words about it. And, but because I grew up in such a dysfunctional family, I needed, a lot of healing in order to be able to do what I felt like God was calling me to do. Because if I had done it in the state that I was in when I first understood what God was calling me to do, I probably would have hurt and destroyed a lot of people and a lot of relationships. And I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my own self-worth. I kind of had fears of insignificance and stuff like that. So I went on a journey and learned about myself and let God heal my heart. And that's obviously the super abridged version. And then he kind of turned up the heat when I was like 27. I got really sick and like the prognosis was not good. And the doctors were like, you're going to have to do these things, or basically you're going to be in a wheelchair with someone taking care of you for the rest of your life. That's not actually what they said. They said something much more vulgar, but I'm going to clean it up for the sake of the podcast because I'm a pastor. So
this is the episode that doesn't get marked explicit.
Right. Yeah. So we'll see. We're only at the beginning here. So I actually heard the audible voice of God, and he gave me some instruction and told me he was going to heal me. And that was enough for me to hold on to the promise. And he told me it's not about your body, it's about your heart. So I went on a journey to get more healing and figure out what that meant and learn how to surrender to God and learn how to trust him and work out all of my wounds. And eventually I moved to California to go to ministry school there. And that was remarkably life-changing. I honestly
Bethel,
wish,
right?
Yeah, at Bethel. I wish everybody could do it. I think it would do everyone some good because
Even if you're not pursuing ministry.
Oh yeah, most of the people there aren't pursuing ministry.
They go for the experience.
Yeah, and because even if they're in, let's say in business or in government or education, they still want to learn how to bring the kingdom of God into whatever sphere or realm that they're in.
Right.
And it's transformative. It's more than learning how to do ministry. You get ministry done to you. It's more one of those things where I went in thinking that I was going to learn a lot of stuff. And I did. We have Bible classes and, exams and how to read tons and tons of books and all that stuff, presentations, preaching. But primarily for me, it was like life transformation. It was kind of letting God be the one and only thing in my life and letting him speak to my heart. And even though I had gone through at that point probably 10 years on my healing journey, I still had a lot of like big roots of brokenness in my heart that I couldn't figure out how to get out any other way. I spent most of my days and nights when I wasn't in school, like in the prayer house they had what they called worship rooms, which was where different bands would lead worship for like an hour or two, and they would switch back to back, and you could just sit in there for like 6 hours and like be in worship and journal and read the Bible. And I spent most of my time there doing that, and God completely changed my life. And here I am.
That's wild.
Yeah.
How'd you get involved in V1?
That's such a funny question because we really don't know the answer.
I just showed up one day.
So I think, this is what I think. I think Angela Maldonado, Angela DeLuca at the time, was, she and I had known each other for some years. We had some spiritual mentors in common. And so we had met over the years. And then she and I lived in Redding, where Bethel is, at the same time for a few months.
It's Redding, California?
Redding, California.
Not Redding, Pennsylvania?
It's a hole. Like if you're thinking about vacations, you're not going to Redding unless you're going to Bethel, because it's the armpit of California. It really is. But there's a Trader Joe's there, which was its only saving grace. Yeah,
Clutch.
and the views. The views are amazing. You can see Shasta Mountain from everywhere in the town. So, yeah, so I think she posted it on her, like she checked in on Facebook, and I saw it and didn't go because the first few months I was home from California, I didn't want to go to church because I had been going to church every day for 2 years.
Every minute of every day.
Right. School was essentially church. And then when I was done, I would go to a different kind of church. So I like took a 4 or 5 week break, and then I'm like, oh, no, I'm never going to find a church that's as good as Bethel, because Bethel is like
top tier.
Bomb.com, right? And I had been to a lot of the churches in Long Island, and I was like, sorry, I probably shouldn't say that, but whatever. I that's how I felt.
No, I mean,
it
is what it is. I've said it before with someone. Someone asked me what one of the first churches I went to, and it was a local church. I said it on the episode, but I won't say it again for whatever's sake.
Don't.
But it was tough to get through.
Yeah.
Like the music was like electrical instruments, like electric drums and stuff like that. It didn't sound the best because of that. The quality, the preaching was good, the message was good, but the delivery of it, I fell asleep most times I went there.
So for me, it wasn't as much that the churches weren't, because I had been to a lot of churches that were maybe not at the stage of excellence that I needed them or wanted them to be at, but the Lord was moving and they were alive with the Spirit of God. And so for me, after going from an experience where I literally encountered the presence of God every day for 2 years, to go into a place that was like dead, I just couldn't imagine doing it, right? And I actually thought that I was going to be interning in Florida with this prophetic evangelist guy. And so I was only going to be in New York for 3 months. And so I was like, I mean, I guess I'll just visit this church that Angela, because I know Angela's background, and we have similar like belief systems about the presence of God and stuff like that. I said, okay, well, let me try it out because maybe that's the jam. And I went in and, I went into the movie theater, and it was all dark. And I actually used to lead church in movie theater when I was in my early 20s. So it wasn't like
weird
unfamiliar to me,
yeah.
But it was done well. And Pastor Julie was singing that elevation song, the atmosphere is changing now. And I felt the Holy Spirit descend in a way I hadn't felt in New York in a long time, probably 10 years. And I was like, oh, okay, this is my church. And I went up and met Pastor Mike afterwards, and it turned out that we had a friend in common. I said, I just, moved back from going to Bethel's ministry school. And he said, oh, do you know so-and-so? And I said, yeah, I was like very, very close with her twin sister. She prophesied over me like my second week in school. And
wow.
Yeah, and so we kind of clicked, and then we did what's called a treasure hunt. I don't know if everybody knows what that is. Do you know what that is?
I know what it is, but explain it for people who don't.
So a treasure hunt is where you learn how to operate in the gifts of the Spirit. So there's probably a lot of people that are listening that they don't even know what that means. But basically, prophecy, the gift of healing, stuff like that, word of knowledge. So you basically take a sheet of paper, and and you like answer these questions, and you answer them with word of knowledge. So it'll say, what color shirt is the person that you're supposed to pray for wearing? And you ask the Lord and you write down whatever he says. And then you go out to different places and you look for the people with these
garments.
Yeah. Shirts, shoes. One of them said, like, I remember once I did one, it said the person's going to be eating a lollipop, like where they're going to be, how old they're going to be, and what ailments they might have. Right. And so I was like, I love doing treasure hunts. And Pastor Mike was like, cool, let's do it. And he kind of put a message out and said, we're going to be doing a treasure hunt. And I was like, okay, cool. And I showed up and it was just me, Pastor Mike, and Chase. So me and Chase went out, and me and Pastor Mike and Chase afterwards talked for like 2 hours. And I just like loved similar vision and the vibe. And then like mid-August, I was like, I hadn't heard back from the person I was supposed to intern with, like when I'm supposed to show up, like what, anything. And I just started praying and I asked God, like, what do I do? And he said, you're to plant in New York. V1 is your family, and this is where you belong. And I was like, oh, because I didn't want to live in New York again. I was like not down for it. My sister lived like 20 minutes away from where this guy's office was in Florida. And so I was like, cool, I'm going to move to Florida. I'm going to live 10 minutes from my sister. I'm going to love it. But that was not what the Lord had planned for me. And now, after 3 years of being here, I can see why. And my life has just, there's a pastor that I love from Bethel that said, destiny is found in family. And so when I heard the Lord say, V1 is your family, I was like, oh, this is where my life opens up. This is where everything that God promised me is going to start to happen. And it has, and it's been amazing.
Yeah, I actually remember those earlier days of saying that, and just the treasure hunt thing reminded me of a time where I think Chase went out with a couple of guys. One of them was Darian. I know that because Darian's the one who told me what had transpired, and basically they had went through this with Chase, and Chase said, the guy's going to be wearing like a red and white horizontally striped shirt with like cargo shorts and Nike shoes or something. Like it was extremely specific. And then they went to like the Walt Whitman Mall or something and found a guy, and they're like, oh, are you struggling with this thing? And the dude was like, yeah, why do you know that? Mm-hmm. Like totally blew his doors off, and then they prayed for him. The dude starts freaking out and weeping in the middle of the mall or something. Like I just remember hearing those stories, and I was like, wow, that's so wild.
You know what? It's so cool to watch people realize that God was thinking about them to people that like don't even know him or know them. And to see that God cares so much about these specific individual things, that he would have people come and chase you down and find you, and that he would give them specific directions to do that. It just, I don't know, there's something about it that, in the Bible, Jesus was, he did ministry through what we would now maybe call power evangelism, which is he healed people and he set them free. And he told them about their lives. Like, I love the story of the woman at the well where he's like, you're right. You're not married now. And all the last, the guy you're living with now is not your husband. And all the last, you've had 5 husbands before that. And it's, a lot of people perceive that story as like Jesus calling her out for her sin. But I actually think he's calling out her pain. And he's saying, hey, I see you. And I know you're hurting. And I actually have the solution and the answer. And I think sometimes treasure hunts can be that for people.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. And especially when you talk about like healing people and miracles. And I know that there's a lot of people, even Christians, that don't believe in that stuff.
Yeah.
And even just recently, yesterday, we went to Six Flags and we listened to Matthew McConaughey on Joe Rogan. Because Matt Burke had actually said it was great. Me and him talk about Joe Rogan episodes.
I'm sure. Matt's so cool.
And but he was like, no, it's great. He's like, if you like Matthew McConaughey, you'll love him after listening. But even he, he's a Christian dude and lives by Christian values. Always grew up blue collar, like that sort of thing.
I didn't know that.
And he even said, though, he's like, all that stuff in the Bible, because Joe's always questioning it. Joe is not a Christian or anything like that, but they can have a conversation about it. And he's like, yeah, all that stuff about like miracles happening and, the burning bush. And he's like, that stuff. He's like, I don't know what to do with that. Mm-hmm. But as a Christian, the principles are there for me, and that's how I live my life. And I think that's why I am where I am. He goes, I don't think I necessarily have to do that stuff to be where I am. But I mean, if someone else, he's like, if someone else wants to teach me, like, go for it. But like, I'm not digging into that stuff.
Right.
But for me, I didn't grow up anything. Celebrated Christmas and Hanukkah and all the stuff in between, basically. And one of the things that solidified my belief was when I saw miracles firsthand.
Yeah.
And to people listening that are like, what are you talking about? Like, you've heard the stories and you don't believe them, and I totally understand because I didn't either. And then I had a deviated septum since I was a little kid, probably like 9-10 years old or so. My friend Mike Bain, we were playing basketball in my backyard, and he's like I don't know, 3 feet taller than me at the time. He literally just like put his body into me so he could get a shot or something, and I just went flying, and my face made contact with a metal lawn chair.
Oh my God.
And I like messed up my septum, whatever. So I had a deviated septum basically for a majority of my life. And then I just remember being in a room like that where there was, I think it was Anthony. He was like, who needs me to, he's like, I'm going to heal someone right now. Someone tell me what they want to be healed with. And I'm like kind of skeptical and whatever. And everyone is skeptical. No one at the time was the launch team to V1. No one had seen anything like that. Mm-hmm. And I was just and literally no one's like saying anything. No one wants prayer for anything. And Anthony's like, come on. He's like, I'm telling you right now, I will heal someone. Like God is telling me I'm going to heal someone right now. Bring it. And I was like, I have a deviated septum. Like, can you fix that? And he's like, God could do anything, bro. Let's go. And Anthony's like, but you're making me do weird crap. Like I'm gonna hold your nose. I'm gonna grab your nose. Like, I got your nose. He's like joking around, but like he's serious. But he literally he grabs my nose like this. And everyone, like a bunch of people, put their hands on his hand, and they're all praying for my nose. And literally takes and he goes, boom, like amen, whatever. And he takes his hand off my nose, and I breathe in through my nose, like equally through both nostrils for the first time in memory. And literally the first words out of my mouth were, holy shit.
and we just went explicit.
Now we're explicit. But like I had to say it. But like, and everyone in the room was like, what?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, for real. I was like, I can breathe through both my nostrils right now.
Yeah.
Like I'm breathing through my nose. And and Pastor Mike likes to tell that story too, but I personally had struggled with that. Like even in experiencing that, I still was in disbelief.
Yeah.
And I literally remember, after that, everyone's like, yo, pray for me, yo. Like my back hurts, my whatever. And there were other healings that happened at that moment. But I remember praying for someone else and putting their hands on them. And the whole time that like I should be focusing on praying for them and thankful for the miracle that just happened to me, I'm questioning what literally just happened to me. I'm like, how did this even really happen? Like I was still physical miracle. And I was literally questioning it. And I felt this like weird thing over me that was like kind of like a told you so kind of thing. Like I told you I'm real kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then my septum went back to how it was. Oh. Like the next day. Like I woke up the next day and it was back to how it was. But I feel like that put me on a path that made me pursue it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Versus like, I feel like a lot of people, and I've literally witnessed it, even people with the launch team that are, I don't even know what they're doing now, mm-hmm. who experienced miracles like that and then disappeared off the face of the earth.
Yeah, I mean, but that it, the Bible talks about like the seed falling on good soil and falling on not good soil, like sometimes even in experience, like, I know people that watched people get miracles and saw all of it. And, when I grew up in the Vineyard, which is a charismatic chain of churches. They're a planting church. So there's like probably thousands of them around the world. I think it's like 1,500 or something. And the person who started the Vineyard Church was kind of the guy who started or was part of the the Jesus movement in the 70s, late 70s. And he's the guy who coined the phrase, faith is spelled RISK, right? So we did a lot of this kind of stuff. And in the 90s, there was what they called a renewal, where like signs of revival were starting to go around the world into different churches. And it happened in our church. And I watched, we watched people get touched with the Holy Spirit and fall out or get healed or speak in tongues or all those things. And then they, 10, 15 years later, they're not believers anymore, 20 years later. And it's hard to understand how they could have actually experienced the presence of God. But
yeah,
the seed
I mean, for me, like I wasn't really, like I was upset at the time maybe, but for me, like I said, it really put me on a path of like, yo, this is real. I need to see what this is about. And like, because prior to being part of the launch team, I didn't own a Bible. Like I didn't.
Sure.
I was there for the quote unquote experience. I didn't want to miss out on anything. I wanted to be part of this thing. That if something were to happen, I was a part of it, and I can say I'm a founder of V1 Church forever. But no. And after that, several other things have happened between everything in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, good and bad. And a lot of people will point fingers at any kind of religion at all and be like, oh, well, if he's so great, why does bad thing happen over here, bad thing happen over there? And I'm like, yo, in my opinion, he lets it happen because something greater is supposed to happen after that.
Well, I mean, the Bible is really clear about how we have free will, and so we get to choose.
Well, yeah, and that's another thing. I'm like, yo, God isn't ascending on earth every 24 seconds and every square foot of earth to stop bad people from doing bad things.
Right. Like, well, if he did that, if he was controlling like that, then our love for him would be manipulated, right? We wouldn't have choice to love him or devote our lives to him or sacrifice for him. And love doesn't mean anything if it's not out of choice. So we have choice to do that, but we also have choice to not do that. And there's a consequence, good and bad consequences for both. Probably not good consequences for the not choosing, but so I think we have to remember, I think a lot of times people think God is like this genie, and we just like ask him to do something and he's just supposed to snap his fingers and do it. And it's really the other way around. It's us being humble and understanding that he knows better than we do about everything.
Yeah.
He's smarter than me, and thank God for that, because I'm a real idiot sometimes.
You're incredibly intelligent.
Oh,
Stop
thanks. But I would do lots more stupid things without him.
As a human,
yes,
we do stupid things.
Yes.
Even Christians do stupid things.
Even pastors do stupid things.
And you know what? You're allowed.
Yeah.
You're not condemned to hell if you do one bad thing. Look at that.
Well, we probably should try not to do it.
Yeah, I'm not saying
yes,
go have a ball, go do cocaine on the strip in Nevada, but
yeah.
But yeah, you know what I mean.
Yes.
Hopefully, I don't think if you don't, you're a silly head.
Well, there's lots of people these days that try to like split hairs of what people say and then call them a heretic. So
I don't care. You go for it. I will. And you want to come on here and argue with me for 3 hours?
Great.
Please. I think it would be fun as heck. I said that to one of my friends. I forget who it was. And they were asking how the podcasting's going. And I was like, I really just want to get someone on here that like I don't really like, but we're acquaintances.
Oh.
And just like have at it.
That would be cool.
But unfortunately, I don't have good enough friends that disagree with me on a lot of different things that we can talk like that and there not be a lot of tension. I feel like those acquaintances, like I watch what they post on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm like, I would cross that line and they would get mad and this would turn it. I've literally pictured people being like flipping, like Jesus in the bazaar, like flipping the tables, like screw this. I can't do this with you. Like, so I try to, I don't know.
As confrontational a person as I am, because I recognize that I am sometimes a polarizing person. I don't actually like confrontation unless it's needed. So I won't argue with anybody about politics or religion ever. I will never do that. In fact, you'll find me more quiet in those kinds of conversations until I feel like I have an in to say something kind and loving and generous. But I will never, like, I feel like my energy has to be used. We have a depletable amount of energy and
Yeah.
self-will every day. I feel like I just don't want to use it doing that.
Yeah,
you know?
no. If I ever do have an argument like that, I plan ahead of time. Like I know I'm gonna go to this guy's house and I'm gonna argue with him. Like you know what I mean? Like because I'm the same way. You know me. Like I'm a pretty low energy dude. And then people that have seen me at parties are like, "There's no way." But like, no, I saved up all day
Yeah.
to go ham at that
planned
party.
that.
Like that's how I am. But like most of the time, I'm very non-confrontational. I'm like, dude, just leave it alone, whatever.
Yeah.
But then other times, people are like, oh, like I took speech and debate class in school.
I know.
and
People get a kick out of it.
I never lost a debate.
That's exhausting to me.
And I still pat myself on the back for that.
You know what? Like, I feel like, there's this Christian saying that nobody gets argued into the kingdom of God. Nobody gets argued into heaven. Like, if somebody disagrees with you, they need an encounter with God. They don't need your facts, and they don't need Bible quotes because
Thrown at them.
chances are they don't even believe the Bible is the living word of God. So how is it going to help you to use Bible quotes? So I just feel like that's why power encounters are important. That's why praying for the sick, that's why learning how to extend grace, prophecy, words of knowledge are important, because you can cut through the hardened heart, because God's presence can cut through anything.
Yeah. And a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still.
That's
Plain
good.
and simple.
That's right.
I read that in a book somewhere.
That's good.
But
I
it's
like
so
it.
true.
And it rhymes.
It's so true. That's why it sticks out in your head forever.
Right.
But I jotted down some notes here because I wanted to bring back, because when the first section of this, you brought up a lot of good points, but just for, anyways. So you said you knew from a young age that you were called to do something in church and ministry. How did you know? Because I feel like there are a lot of people who, quote unquote, say that they're called to that. And I feel like we've seen a lot of that crash and burn, or people maybe are going about it the wrong way kind of thing. Because there's a follow-up question to that. But so how did you know personally that you were called to ministry and working in the church?
I don't know that I necessarily ever thought that my call to ministry was working at a church.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm a prophetic evangelist at heart. I feel like that's probably the mantle that I carry. And so that usually requires people to be out and about in the world, like praying and prophesying and healing and preaching to the unchurched.
Right.
So I don't know that I ever thought I'll be in the church. I did know that I was going to speak in large venues. I knew that I was going to sing in large venues, stuff like that. I honestly don't know the answer to that, because I can't tell you one specific moment where I was like, I have this magnificent dream, and then I'm like, yes, that's the answer. But I just remember this just inner knowing. So like, if you've ever heard me talk about hearing the voice of God, you've heard me talk about it in the form of like, there's 4 major ways that we hear from God.
This was the follow-up question.
Okay. It's I won't go into it too much. It's not actually my teaching. I learned it from someone else, but it's knowing, hearing, seeing, and feeling. And so I operate primarily in knowing and feeling. Okay. I operate in all of them. We all operate in all of them, but for me, feeling and knowing are the most prominent. So sometimes I will like be just going along in life, and all of a sudden I know, like, God gives me a blueprint in my brain for something that I never understood before. So sometimes I just know things and I didn't know why I knew them, which probably frustrates a lot of people listening, that I'm like, I don't know, I just knew. But I had several dreams about it. I started leading worship when I was 13, and there was a lot of fruit from me leading worship. Like, people would encounter God when I'd lead worship. So I got that feedback. I had the dreams. And then when I was 18 or 19, I started to get prophecies from other people. People would have dreams about me preaching on a stage in a stadium, or people would have dreams of me laying my hands on the sick in like a foreign country, and they would come and tell me. And these are people that didn't really know what God was speaking to my heart. And a lot of times the words would be repeated over and over again from different people. So there was a lot of confirmation. And this was many years before I ever knew what it actually looked like and what I actually was like. Most of my life, I went through having to cling to God because I didn't know, how do you get into ministry? I didn't know, like, nobody was walking me through it. I didn't have any mentors that were like, okay, go do this, and do this. So I kind of just had to follow God one step after the next, like in obedience. Like when God told me to go to California, I had a beautiful home with beautiful furniture. I had just started counseling and coaching people. I had a great life. I lived in Astoria. I loved it there. So when God told me to leave, I like sold everything I owned and moved across the country. It was pretty radical. I had no idea why I was going. It wasn't like I was like, I'm going to find a ministry out of this, or I'm going to find my destiny out of this. I just knew that I needed to be obedient to God. So I went. And that's how I wound up here. It was just a lot of small, obedient decisions.
Yeah. And Peter Ladenheim, the youth pastor from Shelter Rock that I had on here last episode, he started a student youth ministry podcast through Shelter Rock, and he asked me to be on there. So I was on there.
That's awesome.
I think it's dropping today, actually. But I said that, and I was like, along the vein of what you're saying here, church the only ministry isn't church.
Right.
I said, your ministry could be business, which you alluded to before too. Your ministry could be business. It could be coaching people. It could be teaching. It could be in the church, whatever. Like the ultimate goal is the same. But I think that's pretty interesting though.
Yeah. I mean, I also feel called to business. I have an
so you said you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
That's one of your things. That's one thing you did give me. You're like, well, you could tell them I'm an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I'm actually very proud about that because I think for many years, part of, we all have these limiting beliefs that are related to the way we grew up. And part of mine was that I couldn't ever be successful in business because I watched my parents fail at business a lot. And I think specifically my dad had a real failure complex around it. So I think I just inherited that. I picked that up. And I had to go through the process of healing that and learning. I mean, that was the hardest thing when I first started coaching before I went to California, was that I had all these fears that I was never going to be successful and I was never going to find the clients. And those limiting beliefs paralyzed me. And I had to get healing in those areas. So I'm really proud of the entrepreneurial part of my life. And feel like now that I've gotten that limiting belief out of the way, I'm always thinking like an entrepreneur. Like it's always been in me. It was skewed, I guess.
Yeah. And for me, the way that I think in terms of entrepreneurial stuff is I a lot of times will look at something and say, someone could be doing this better, or someone could be utilizing this to do something. But you know what I mean? Like, something I've had to work on personally is turning my critical mind to the positive end of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to critique things and just be angry about it, and that was it. Like, this is stupid. They should be doing this better, but whatever. Now I look at, or at least try to. It still happens. I'm a human.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at something and I'm like, this could be way better if we did X, Y, Z.
Right.
And which is something I love about V1, which is where you have people like, Mike and Julie and Chase and the whole crew, the 80 pastors that we have now. Not really. There's like 8 actually. How many are
10.
there? 10.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Including our lead pastors. Senior pastor is such an old school term. And I find myself using it once in a while. I'm like, wah, wah. It just shows how old I am.
Pastors.
Uh-huh.
But we have the leadership where, even Pastor Mike, when we're there last Saturday, actually I think it's airing today. Whichever one's airing today, whenever I was there for it might have been 2 Saturdays ago, right before he was doing a message about the space acquisition and building out Revolution Bar, which will now be a V1 campus. He was like, before I get into this, before I talk about this, he's like, "What? Give me ideas. Everyone come here. Everyone come to the stage. Like, let's talk about this." He's like, "I want your voices to be heard through the message that I'm going to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put my own twist on it. But ultimately, what are you guys feeling with this?" And that's what I think makes him such a great leader, as well as all the other leaders that we have, that everyone is so incredibly humble to say, I kind of earned my way to this position of leadership, but I'm still not the best here. And if you give an idea that's better than mine, we're going to go with that. And I can't even count how many times I've seen Pastor Mike say, we should do this. And then someone like, Evan or Mike or Steve or whoever, those were just made up names, could be like, oh, I think it'd be actually way better if we did it this way. And he's like, you know what? You're totally right. That would be way better. And
Yeah.
he changes the whole plan completely, trashes his own plan, and goes with the one that Joe Schmo came up with.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, an incredible attribute of leadership, because ultimately, and that's how you get people to trust you. And then when you have people that trust you, they buy into the vision more, and it all unfolds in positive ways.
True. It's true. And also, like, leaders can't do that unless they have a real strong handle on their leadership, right? If they were flip-floppy leaders and then they started asking people would feel insecure. But
Right.
because you know that they're not,
Right.
because they're strong leaders, then they can ask, and it doesn't make you feel insecure or scared that they don't know what they're doing, you know? I love
Pastor
that.
Mike has always followed through on what he said he was going to do also.
That's great.
You have, I personally, as a human being, have zero reason not to trust Pastor Mike. Except, like, the only time where I could say he maybe went back on something that he said was when he was like, let's meet up and get mani-pedis in Queens on Saturday. And I was like, bro, let's do it. And then Saturday morning, he calls me and says, sorry, bro, I can't. I got called for an emergency. So we had to break our verbal
Your
contract. But, like, I'm like, okay, I want to get mani-pedis with my pastor. He's got to go deal with a spiritual emergency. I'm okay with that. Yeah, so we're both, like, gruffly, bald-headed, bearded, hairy Italian men. So we would always make jokes years ago now about, like, enjoying getting manicures and pedicures and, like, a shave and, like, massage, whatever. So all the time, he's like, yo, we got to meet up for manis and pedis.
That's so fun.
But, like, I'm like, yeah, like, let's do it. I'm like, yo, we should go to a spot where you go to, like, the little fishies eat the dead skin off your feet. And he's like, dude, I'm so down for that.
I've never done that. It kind of creeps me out a little.
It's awesome.
Is it?
It's so cool.
Where do you do that? In Queens?
You probably could somewhere in Queens. The one time that I did it, though, was in Dominican Republic.
Oh, okay.
Me and Nicole went on vacation, and we went to a salon there, and Nicole's like, oh, let's get manicure, pedicures, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. And then they're like, oh, do you want to do the fishies? And I was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yo, I've seen this on TV. I'm in. And I feel like Nicole was kind of like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, dude, it's going to be awesome. Like, it's going to be awesome. And it was.
That's
literally,
crazy.
I sat there with my feet in a tank for like 45 minutes.
And your feet came out like a baby's bottom afterwards?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, my feet are pretty dang soft to begin with.
Because that's because you don't wear sandals.
I never walk barefoot. Ever. Around my house, I have house slippers. I have house flip flops. I'm never barefoot. My mom instilled that in me. My mom is, as old as she is, baby skin feet, and like, my feet are smoother than Nicole's.
Wow.
She'll
Well,
be
but
mad that I
women wear
said that, but it's true.
heels. Women wear heels.
Yeah.
And sandals and, like, all the shoes that women wear, they destroy. I remember when I was
hard leather and cardboard. $500 heels.
Right. I was working in when I was working in Manhattan, and I wore heels to work every day, and, like, for like 8 months, one of my toes just was, like, raw from wearing them every day.
So
and I was
bad.
like, oh my God, people do this for their whole lives.
Yeah.
Now, I love wearing heels. Don't get me wrong. I'm a little bougie, but
You prefer a comfortable wedge.
I will wear heels once a week or twice a week. I'm not like walking through the subway station in heels.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's wild. And men's dress shoes aren't any better. They're all leather and uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
I have to buy wide ones, and I have shoe stretchers, and I make them even wider because they're stupid. But yeah, circling back, what were some of the dysfunctions that, if you're comfortable sharing, that kind of grew up in your house? Because I know you have a good relationship with your parents, right?
Not. I wouldn't say it's good, but I would say it's probably like I respect and honor and love them, but I wouldn't say that I feel close to them, like emotionally close to them. I mean, at the end of the day, it was a cycle of codependency. You know, lots of control, rage, lots of passivity on some sides, kind of avoidance, denial, just all of the shame, like all of the things that make you question whether or not your experiences are real. I grew up with this very strong inner knowing of what was right and wrong in terms of I shouldn't feel this way. Like, this is not normal for me to feel like this all the time, or this is not normal for our family to experience this all the time. I don't know if that was God given, or, I do think it's God given because it at this point, it's part of my giftings. I can see it in other people, which makes me good at my job, But so always had this battle between what I was experiencing at home and what I knew was healthy or normal, and so, there was a lot of, I remember, so I'm an extrovert and I love being around people and I love being connected to people. So I have lots of really, really great friends. I'm blessed to have some of the best friends in the whole world, and we are very deeply connected. So we talk about everything together. We're not like, hey, let's go do this thing together. And we're like, let's sit. I went to my friend's house last week and I said, hey, can I come over and cry on your couch for a while? And I literally went over, we had tea, I cried. And then she's like, okay, love you. Let's do this again in a couple weeks, So when I was growing up, I remember like there was just all of this chaos and terrible stuff going on in our house. And I called a friend and I was talking to the friend about it because I needed to vent and I needed somebody to, I just needed to be heard and known in it. And my mom grabs the phone and hangs it up and says, we don't air our dirty laundry. Don't ever tell anybody else what's going on in the house. And so there was a lot of that. And it was so confusing because it's so opposed to who I am. And so for me, it was just very, and a lot of control. And I'm a little bit of a rebel in that I don't like to be told what to do and I don't like to be controlled. Like, I need to come to a decision on my own. And I will listen to counsel and I'm open to it, but I just don't like it. I don't like being controlled. So that was really difficult for me. And all of those things added up to like a perfect storm of me just not knowing what's real, what's not real. There was a lot of addiction, generational curses in my family, which comes with a whole other set of denial and like escape from reality and stuff like that. And thankfully I never really got addicted to anything. I smoked for a long time, but all of the repercussions when you grow up in a cycle of addiction, there's the caretakers and the escapers and the codependents, and like everybody has to play in that cycle in order for the cycle to keep going. And if somebody steps out, it throws the whole ecosystem off. And I was always the one to step out. And so I remember there was something going on in our family, and my sister and I were out to lunch with my parents, and I couldn't have been older than like 19 or 18 or 19. And I looked at everybody and I said, hey, are we going to talk about this awful thing going on? Or are we just going to pretend it's not happening? And everybody looks at me and is like, Kiele, why do you have to bring everything up? Just leave it alone, And that was my life experience. So for me, it caused me to believe that my voice didn't matter, that my emotions didn't matter, that I wasn't significant or important to the people around me. And those belief systems were partially the way that I processed the information and partially my experiences. So we don't want to ever go into a situation and blame, oh, my family sucked so much and that's why I'm so messed up, because that still makes us a victim. It makes us powerless. But for me to look at it and say, because of who I am, because of who I've learned, like God created me to be, which was a journey to learn that, I know that this is the way I processed these experiences, and that was really hurtful to me. And so I have to go through the process of healing those belief systems that have hurt me. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah. So then, you said before, there was a period where you were just very broken and you had to go through healing and uprooting and healing and uprooting.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
So was that a lot of that process, was that solely like going to Bethel and like whatever, or what did that look like for you? Because I'm sure there are other people that have gone through some stuff that are like, where do I even start? Especially people that may not have a counselor or a system or a church or someone that they can lean on to go through this, or even people that, I mean, there are probably people that listen to this right now that don't have a foundation of anything, and it's just me, myself, and I, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, I feel like I'm messed up. Where do I start?
Yeah. So when I was 20 years old, God actually spoke to me very clearly and said, I need you to break up with your boyfriend because I need you to be single because we have some stuff that we need to work out in your heart. And I literally told him no, because the fear of having to face I didn't realize this at the time, but in retrospect, the fear of having to face those things and feel those things felt almost like it would kill me. And I was using my romantic relationship to like project so that I didn't have to think about my own hurts and pains and problems, which is normal, common behavior for a codependent. When I was 23, I finally did it. So it took me 3 years to obey the Lord. And those 3 years were the worst. So I was in a 5-year relationship. 2 years in, God told me to break up with him. The following 3 years were absolute torture. So in retrospect, I should have listened to the Lord and just broken up with the guy and gone through the process. But well, first of all, I read Codependent No More, which if you come from a family of codependency or addiction or abuse, you should read it.
Super quick, what's codependency?
I love the description, this most simple description: I'm not okay if you're not okay. So anytime the emotional responsibility overlaps. And then there's tons of symptoms that come along with that. So I started reading Codependent No More, and it took me months to get through because I was literally highlighting and processing and journaling every page because it was like my life. I mean, her stories were much different than mine, but the feelings and experiences as a result were exactly like mine. And honestly, the first month of that, every night I would go to sleep and I would say, God, take me home. I can't do this. It's too hard. It hurts too much. Just like I just faced stuff. I think that the key is to be fearless. I think the key is to decide that pain is not going to kill you and that you can face it, and it has to have an end. Like this thing inside me that I had my whole life was, it has to have an end. It has to be different. There has to be something better. And I think that like unction kept me going because it was awful. I mean, the process was awful. But I just trusted that I was going to get to the end of it. And I was so tired of hurting inside. And I said, I have to get healthy. Like I have to get this out. And that desperation is what caused me to keep going. And I think a lot of people stop the process way before they get the breakthrough because it's too much work and it's too hard and it's too painful and it exposes our brokenness too much, and they just stop and they go back to all of their coping mechanisms and all of their addictions and their overeating and their porn and all the stuff that people go to numb the pain. And I just couldn't. You know, there's that scripture in the Bible where Jesus was like, are you going to leave me after he talks about drink my blood and eat my flesh, and everybody's leaving, and he looks at the disciples and he goes, are you going to leave me too? And Peter turns around and says, where else would we go? Like, to who else would we go? I just felt like that. I had come to a place where there was nowhere else to go, and I had to let the Lord take me through the process.
So in going through all that, which is mentally, emotionally, physically heavy, stressful.
Very heavy. Mm-hmm. But peaceful, because when you're in the hands of the Lord
and all that stuff.
Right.
But I mean, leading into what I'm saying, around when did you get sick?
So I probably started...
Like, did that time frame overlap there?
I got sick when I was 27. I started processing my pain when I was 23. But at 27, things got really, really, like it came to a head. And it was a very traumatic experience that I think triggered it. Like a very traumatic experience in a romantic relationship that triggered it. So, and it was shocking because I remember saying, how can I do the things, Like, God, how can I do the things that you called me to do if doctors are going to be, like, if doctors are telling me I'm going to be in a wheelchair and I'm not going to be able to walk or take care of myself? It doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't line up to your promises. I don't understand it. And I'm very idealistic in my thinking sometimes. Like, that's one of the things I learned over the past, like, 10-ish years is that I'm very idealistic. And so it's hard for me to understand when something doesn't line up with what I thought was happening, you know? Yeah. So I think it was related. I think people who have physical and emotional trauma, like, locked up in their bodies, are always at risk of igniting a predisposition or something like that. So I think that's why it's important to work through your stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there's been studies after studies where people obviously they look at like, oh yeah, what you put in your body via your mouth receptacle can affect your long-term health. Yeah, your face hole. people for the most part, I feel like, have accepted, okay, yeah, the food that I'm putting into my mouth and into my body will determine my long-term health. Mm-hmm. But I don't think a lot of people think about what's resting in your heart and what's resting in your brain and what you let sit there for years and years and decades, and you let it fester. Mm-hmm. And, it depends what happens. A traumatic experience could happen, and it'll ignite and explode, and something might happen. You don't know, but that's why it's so important. And I thankfully, I feel like today's day and age is probably the most quote unquote woke when it comes to how important mental health and spiritual health is. Yeah. So I'm glad that more people are talking about it, as I'm sure many other people. But yeah, no, that's important stuff.
So I don't actually think most people know when they're avoiding their emotions.
I'd agree. I feel like there are people that are emotionally, forgetting the E there. They're emotionally, they can't move, emotionally broken and have been since childhood. And they'll pick up a book or see a movie, and they're like, wow, that thing that person had to go through, that was crazy. And I'm like, yo, the same thing happened to you, bro. Like, maybe you should work on that. Like, but I agree with what you're saying.
So emotions are, not to be super weird, but emotions are energy, right? They're pockets of energy. Everything is energy. Everything has
a frequency.
Right, and a mass in some form. So
which is science, by the way.
Right.
Like, you could look into it.
I know, but lots of Christians get weird with the word energy because they're strange and they think everything's new agey. But so if we have emotions that we're not dealing with or processing, they're not going anywhere. They're still stuck inside you. So it's like your body starts to compensate for our emotions, our bodies, and our minds and our spirits should all work together. So when we shut down our emotions, our body starts to compensate or overcompensate for the fact that our emotions have no voice. So our bodies overwork, or we actually carry pockets of that emotion in different parts of our bodies. Like, people get backaches and, back problems or whatever, or headaches. And likely it's just lots of stress that they have stuck inside them that they haven't physically or emotionally worked out.
I remember, I forget which book it is, but I'm pretty sure it was Napoleon Hill. I think it was Think and Grow Rich with Peace of Mind, I feel like. I've read it a couple times. I should know if it's from that one or not, but I'm pretty positive it's Napoleon Hill. I've read of a few of his books. But he talks about the invisible / physical manifestation of energy and frequencies that are out in the, quote unquote universe, in the ether, where he uses as examples very simple things that most people would agree with, where he's like, yeah, like, you ever be sitting on the couch with well, he doesn't say that because it's written like 100 years ago, but he's like, you ever be sitting on the couch with your wife and you're thinking like, wow, I really want to make a grilled cheese and eat a grilled cheese right now. And then your wife turns to you and she's like, I really want grilled cheese. And he's like, that's because your frequencies, because you're with each other 24/7 as much more than anyone else, your frequencies become symbiotic.
Yeah.
In that's how you get that feeling, or where you can finish someone's sentence, or you know what someone's feeling. And I know for a fact, like, me and Nicole do that constantly. Like, even if it's like we're driving past something and I'll think to myself, like, that's a weird colored sign, and Nicole's like, why is that sign orange? Isn't that weird? And I'm like, I just said that in my head. Like,
Yeah, I actually feel that way with most people. So I'm a little creepy because I kind of like I can get on anyone else's frequency, I guess, if using your verbiage. So people are like, oh, that's weird. How did you know that? And I'm like, I don't know. I just did.
so tell us about being a life coach, becoming a life coach / counselor, joining up with EI Solutions, all that good stuff. How did that come to fruition? When did you say, I think I want to be a life coach / counselor? You call it a counselor, right? I don't care what you call it.
Whatever.
You're talking to people about their problems and helping them get through it so they can
Yeah.
live a better life,
Yeah.
etc. So, but where did that start? How's that going? That kind of thing.
So when I was 26, I decided I was going to law school. So I quit my job and I started working at a restaurant in Times Square and studying for the LSAT. So I was like, if I can work at this place 3 days a week and make tons of money, then I can spend the rest of my time studying for the LSAT. Got a tutor, took the test, did very well on it, and then decided I didn't want to go to law school because, oh my gosh, I'd scratch my eyes out. And also at the time, there were more people in law school than there were practicing lawyers in the country, and it was going to be very competitive and like kind of saturated market. And I was like, well, I'm not going to go through 3 years and $150,000 of school to have a mediocre life, just be another lawyer, you know? So I was like, what do I want to do? And honestly, I was very lost for a lot of the process. I knew that I was called to ministry, but I didn't know what that looked like, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do next. And so I started going to graduate school for counseling, and I did that. And while I was in graduate school for counseling, I took a life coaching elective, and I loved it. And I wound up getting my life coaching certification. And then I started a business after that. And right after I started the business, I felt a very clear direction from God to quit, to close it, and move to California. And when I did, I realized that there were just areas of my heart that needed to get healed before I could be effective as I am now at that job. You can get all the training in the world, but if you're broken and dysfunctional, like, we can only reproduce what we are. Like, I can't have a Japanese baby because I'm not Japanese, right? I can't produce a Japanese baby.
I mean, I was going to say the blind leading the blind, but...
Well, yeah, I mean, and I wasn't blind. I knew stuff informationally. There were certain areas of my heart where I needed them experientially. But so I can't reproduce health and healing in areas of life where I don't have health and healing yet. And those are the very areas I feel God's called me to bring freedom to people. So I did that. And then I came home, and when I started getting hooked up with V1 Church, I had dinner at Pastor Mike and Pastor Julie's house. And so I remember saying to them, like, hey, I'm a life coach / counselor. I probably said life coach at the time because it's a buzzword at this point. And I feel like where the church was starting to grow, and I said, I'd love to be able to offer some help in these areas where we can develop systems where we give all of the upcoming, the up and coming leaders these skills on how to coach people through certain things. And it's minimal skills. I mean, obviously they need experts, but to get them equipped to have better interpersonal relationships and to help develop the people on their team better. And Pastor Mike was like, it's actually interesting because I was approached to start doing this temperament counseling, and I don't have the time for it, but I'd love to send you in my place. And that's what happened. So I got hooked up with some people that needed a temperament counselor. I started my own business, and it kind of took off very quickly. And then I guess it was like a year and a half ago, we all merged and became EI Solutions. So we're all working for one company now. And I love it. It's amazing. I get to help people get freedom and breakthrough every day. I help lead people to the Lord every day. I help develop them in their understanding of Him and their relationship with Him, and help them have healthier marriages and relationships and find forgiveness and all that stuff. It's the bomb.
.com.
Mm-hmm.
You like to say that,
I
know.
do. Bomb.com. I don't even know if it's cool anymore, but I make it cool because it's mine and I don't care.
Nicole says it every once in a while.
Nice.
Nicole says, what is the other thing? The bee's knees.
I love that. I've said that before, and I'm like, oh, that makes me feel 90, but I kind of like it.
Yeah, no. There's this one time, I don't have it anymore. I'm really upset. So when you get a new phone, unless you save all your recordings to a file, it won't get backed up on your phone backup and transfer to your new phone.
Oh, crap.
So I used to joke about how Nicole can talk to herself for hours. And then like I used to tell her that, and she's like, no, what are you talking about? And she's like, no. I was like, for real, you can. And then I went and picked her up one day after work. This is years ago when we were just dating, and she was living at her dad's and I was living at my mom's, so a long time ago. And I pressed record and just put my phone in my cup holder, and she got in the car and we drove all the way to wherever we were going, and I didn't say a word besides like, mm-hmm. And she talked the entire time.
And you recorded the
and
whole
I recorded
thing.
the whole thing.
Oh, you're such a mean husband.
But it was so cute because she's like, oh, I'm so excited. She's like, I went to the gym today, and then I got home, and then I made a smoothie, and I put some peanut butter, and I put some ice cubes in there, 2 ice cubes, not 3, but 2 ice cubes, and it was so good, and it was the bee's knees, and I so clearly remember her describing herself making this smoothie and calling it the bee's knees because it was so good.
That.
And it was hilarious. It was
She's
so funny.
cute.
And I don't have it anymore because I had gotten a new phone a couple years ago. But yeah, no, amazing.
She's
But yeah, you've been a big help to, I'd say at this point, hundreds and hundreds, if not maybe thousands of people via speaking engagements that you've done talking about EI solutions. Emotional intelligence solutions. You know, a lot of people like to talk about IQ. Knowing things and being smart isn't all it takes to be successful and prosperous, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's where you guys come in and your whole crew, Pastor Bill Hoffman and Damali, and there's like 3 or 4 new people that I haven't even met yet, but I hear they're excellent.
Yeah, actually 2 new people just came on the team. Pastor Jocelyn Perez.
Oh, okay.
And,
I know her.
Jesse Borsina just started
I know him too.
with
Cool.
us. So that's exciting. So if you're listening and you haven't gotten your temperament test done, sign up and do your temperament with Jocelyn or Jesse.
And anyone could do it?
Yeah.
And you just go to, where do you go? What's the website?
EIsolutions.co.
I always get it wrong because
Yeah.
it's .co.
Yeah,
Not
.co.
EIsolutions.co.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Setup session, single session, temperament test,
Yeah.
whatever. Go over it with one of them. I forget when I had my friend Chris Crow on here. I was talking
That's
about.
such a good name, Chris Crow. I don't know why. That's just a really good name.
He's awesome. As is his wife, who just cut all the Nicole's hair off yesterday.
Oh, nice.
It actually looks great.
Yeah,
Good
you
job,
like
Victoria.
it? Yay. I know you were nervous about
I was
that.
nervous, but Tori did a really, really good job.
That's awesome.
And like 3 hours and some color later,
Love that.
it's phenomenal.
Awesome.
Great job. I love the Crows, even though their real name's Crowchilla, but Crow's easier.
Yeah.
And he's gone by Chris Crow for a decade. What was I saying?
We were talking about EI Solutions.
Oh, yeah. So I was saying with him on here, I was like, oh, phlegmatic, sanguine, whatever. He's like, I don't know what any of these words mean.
People call it like penguin. Somebody said sandwich once to me.
It took me, honestly, a while to understand it. I read, what's that book?
Personality
Fleming.
Plus.
Is that the last name?
Fleming?
It's written by someone. I feel like their last name is Fleming.
I don't know.
I have Personality Plus. I don't know if that's the one I read.
It's not, Personality Plus is not
That's not-
comprehensive though, because it doesn't have supine in it.
No. I read a book that didn't have supine because supine like wasn't a thing then.
Right. Well, supine's been a thing since the 80s. So.
Okay. So sorry. But either way, I had to read a book on it that broke down every single thing. And whichever book it was that I read, it would be like, all right, in this situation, a choleric would react and act out in this way. A sanguine would react and act out this way. A phlegmatic would, and it was very, very. That one helped a lot in understanding. And then I don't know how many times I have to read my own temperaments to figure out. Like people like, oh, what are you like? I'm like, what are you in affection? And I would always have to like, so it's the one on the bottom of the chart.
Yeah, yeah. So there's actually a book called The Missing Link.
Missing Link.
Yeah.
Yes. I have that book, but I haven't read it.
The Arnos. There's a couple of books on the internet called The Missing Link, but this one is about spiritual genetics. So I don't remember the subtitle, but spiritual genetics something. And it goes in depth about the motivations of each temperament and the needs and the positive and negative traits and like the weaknesses and strengths.
If you're not tracking, temperament is a more in-depth personality. So a lot of people,
it's not a personality. Our personality is made up of our temperament, our life experiences, and like how we show up into the world.
Right.
So temperament's like the base of your personality.
Right. This is how you are innate. You were born a certain way, and you've always felt a certain way. So people be like, "Oh, I'm outgoing. That's my personality." And like that's like the one label, or maybe you give it a couple other things like, oh, I'm high energy, I'm outgoing, I'm bubbly. People, that's how they describe their personality. Whereas temperament will break it down and say, okay, you are outgoing, but maybe in social situations you're outgoing, but then at home and maybe in categories of like affection, you're very reserved. And whatever, which is someone like me. Well, it's kind of, I'm confusing. I'm like all the temperaments, but yeah. So, but temperaments, I tell people, is like the more when I tell people about it and they're like, what is that? I say temperaments is the more in-depth personality.
Yeah.
Because personality is very vague.
Right. Like, so one of the things, I'll give an example from my temperament. So growing up, I would get really upset when my parents would take me away. And I couldn't be around my friends or talk to my friends. And I always wanted to be with my friends, or I always wanted to be with other people and out of the house. And my parents criticized me a lot for it. They're like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you just be content, with your family? And why, my dad even compared me to an aunt that's not super emotionally healthy because she's also that way, loves to be out and about, which really stuck with me and it really hurt me a lot. But it turns out when I got my temperament, I mean, I knew this before I got my temperament, but it's actually a need for me to be out in the world. I'm high energy. I'm very extroverted, outgoing. I love to be around as many people as possible. And I almost need it in order to be able to execute the other responsibilities in my life. And so it was very validating to find that out and be able to show my parents like, hey, this is the reason why I did this my whole life. And then when I did their temperaments, I found out that they are both melancholies and inclusion, which means that they're both introverted and would rather be accomplishing tasks than being with people. And they really don't need a lot of friends. So no wonder why they didn't understand they're extremely extroverted children. All three of us were extremely sanguine. My sister's a sanguine compulsive in inclusion. So, or the fact that because my family they're not physical touch people, and sanguines in affection need a lot of physical touch, it made me feel unloved by them in a lot of ways. So it's not that they didn't love me. It's just that they didn't express it in a way that I needed. They loved a different way.
Mm-hmm. Their triangle-shaped love didn't fit into your square-shaped love.
That sounds disgusting, bro.
I think because that's how I think. It's a puzzle piece. It's you got even if you wanted to say you want to say it, Mike Tyson here. You have your five love languages.
Right.
If you have one type of love language that's gift giving, that person's love language is shaped like gift giving, and someone else's love language is words of affirmation. They're not going to connect in that version of love because each of them has a different quote unquote shaped love. This is what I meant by triangle and square.
I know, but then you are like, forget it. I'm going to make this super explicit if we keep going.
Get your mind out the gutter, Pastor Kiele.
My favorite joke is the "that's what she said" joke. That might be super offensive to all the people listening that are like, "Oh my gosh, she just talked about healing the sick, and now she's saying that's what she said." But hey,
humor's humor.
Same. Agree.
It's funny.
Agree. Also, when life's really serious, you have to find ways to make it not so serious.
Yeah, that's what I've done my whole life as a coping mechanism. But now it's kind of who I am.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like really messed up, and I would just joke about it. Who did I say that to? I said that on Peter's podcast. Because he asked me in high school, I was a delinquent hooligan, and he's like, life of the party and making jokes and yelling at the teacher and doing crap I shouldn't be doing. But the reality was most times I would do that. I was expending my energy to be funny and outgoing, to get people to like me. I'd make a lot of jokes at other people's expense so another group of people would like me. And then I would go home and sit in my basement by myself until 2 o'clock in the morning and not talk to anybody because I was just so distraught by everything else going on in my life. Or not that it was necessarily happening to me at the time, but all the trauma and things that had been going on, I would just kind of shut down. And there's stories that I could tell you of people like literally showing up to my house and being like, "Yo, Ross, come out and hang out." And I'd tell my mom to tell them I'm not home. Tell them I'm not here.
Oh, wow.
Tell them I'm not here.
Wow.
Or like my mom, and I literally one time my mom was going to the store and I was there and she's like, "Ross, just go outside and play with your friends." I was like, "I really can't. I can't go outside." And I got in the car with my mom and I laid down in the seat so they couldn't see me as we drove by.
Wow.
It was tough.
Do you feel like you worked a lot of that stuff out already, or are you still? Is that still a thing?
Yeah, no, I feel like I'm much better than that now. If I don't want to hang out with you, I'll tell you.
Oh, good.
Which is that. Excuse me. That's a thing that I feel like a lot of people, in some way, version of that, people like, "Oh, like come hang out at the party," and there's even memes about it, like, "Oh, I got to see what I'm doing," or "I got to see what my girlfriend's doing," but in reality, you just really don't want to go, and you don't know how to say it, and you don't know how to say it. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely way past that part.
I don't mince words.
Yeah, no.
This is a funny story. So, recently, a friend was in town visiting from Texas, and we decided we were going to go out to the vineyards. She had never been out there, and
wow.
So
that's an experience.
She's from New York. She just had never been out to the vineyards, I think. So we decided to go, and one of the people decided not to come, and then it was me, her, one of her friends, and her friend's boyfriend. And so we're texting, and we're like, "Who's gonna drive?" And I was like, "I don't really want to drive." And then like they're like,
"Go to the vineyard to drink."
We're leaving. I actually don't drink wine anymore, or at least don't drink wine right now because it just doesn't make me feel good. But I still like to go because I love the experience.
Everything is fun about it.
Because I'm such a wine snob, so I like watch people and tell them what they should be tasting.
You're not swirling that right.
There's
Get your whole nose in there. Smell that.
A whole dinner party conversation we had about whether or not you swirl the wine. It's very funny. There's YouTube videos on the whole thing. But
do you believe you should swirl the wine or not?
It depends on the wine, but for the most part, it's kind of a pretentious. You swirl the wine to aerate it, but if you leave it out long enough, you don't need to swirl it and then in your mouth. That's gross. It's so gross. Anyway, so they're texting and they're like, "And we're gonna do this and we're gonna go," and I was like, "Guys, I just got to be honest. I really don't want to go." And they all were like, "Well, thanks for your honesty. Appreciate it." I just couldn't hold it in anymore. I was trying to force myself to do something I didn't want to do. And I just said it. And you know what? Nobody's feelings were hurt. And they all lived.
Last time I did that, my wife's feelings were hurt.
Oh.
Because she wanted to go, and I didn't.
Oh. I get it.
I had logical reasoning for it. So.
Okay. Well.
Anyways, moving on. You're running any marathon soon? That's a joke. But you love the outdoors. You love adventure.
I won't be running any marathons probably ever. I mean, you can hold me to that, but I don't understand why anybody would want to run
torture themselves
until their feet bleed.
I agree.
Sorry. Unless I'm running from someone, I'm never going to do it.
All right, so now we got some straightforward questions here.
Shoot, like fire, like
to begin with, this one's a little more in depth, but
okay.
With the hundreds of people that you've counseled, what do you find that most people struggle with?
Identity. They don't know who they are, and they are worried about what other people think about who they are. And they have to figure out who they are and come up with an internal defining of who they are and not an external one.
Yeah. I think I could agree with that. Just from what's the word? Society.
Yeah.
And today, everybody has a mask on.
So think about it. Like the most base way that the enemy keeps us from living the life that the Lord planned for us to live is by us not knowing who we are. Because if we know who we are, then we're kind of unstoppable to him. And everything in society is, if you look at it, social media and the way people get identity from it, and all the filters they use, and plastic surgery. And by the way, I'm not against any of that stuff, like on principle, but all of it is to create an identity that isn't yours, or to make people think that you are a certain way or not a certain way, or to kind of define you by your likes, define you by, external things. It's a strategic attack from the devil to make sure that nobody ever comes into the fullness of who they are. And I think that's why my job is and people who do what I do, so essential, because it requires people to figure out who they are in order to get breakthrough.
What would you say to people that struggle with discipline?
That's a good question, Ross. Did somebody send this in on the internet?
I actually came up with that one.
That's a good one.
I threw some in there.
Okay.
But then I made up some funny ones too to break up the seriousness.
Great. We could play like a round of a lightning round of love it or hate it. I think, why do people struggle with discipline? I think a lot of people avoid discipline out of a lack of self-worth. So I don't feel good enough to create healthy habits in my life because I don't deserve them. And that's subconscious. That's not a choice we make consciously. And we can't figure out why we're lazy or we keep starting things and stopping them. But I think another reason is temperament. Like someone who's a sanguine in control is going to have a really hard time creating consistency in their life unless they put like external mile markers for themselves. So knowing your temperament will help you combat some of that stuff.
Right. Which I think is always so funny because people will always say things like, just do it 21 times and it'll create a habit. Like maybe for someone who's more direct or methodical, like a melancholy or choleric, that would work. But someone who's all over the place, like a sanguine, or maybe a little laid back, like a phlegmatic kind of person, that might not necessarily work because the phlegmatic's going to have to expel a lot of energy to say, okay, I'm doing this to create a habit kind of thing. And then sanguine's like all over the place, like whatever.
But when sanguines are in independent mode, they're actually highly effective
Yes,
and productive
I agree.
and independent.
That's like Nicole. Nicole is very sanguine. As everyone listening knows, she's very bubbly and outgoing. And every once in a while, when that switch flips in her brain, she'll go on a independent spree where she's not calling me, texting me, asking me what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. She's cleaning the dishes, folding the laundry, reorganizing the entire house, putting down new wood floors. Like, she's on it.
Well, healthy sanguines will be in that state almost all the time, and they'll go into dependent mode very rarely.
Sorry, Nicole.
But it's not necessarily a bad thing that they swing. It doesn't have to be a bad thing as long as they don't create unhealthy habits when they swing.
And you're conscious of it.
By the way, when we say swing, what we mean is swinging from independent to dependent mode. We don't mean anything weird, so don't add us, please.
Mm-hmm. I swing. I'm sanguine, phlegmatic, and control.
Yeah, so you have some smaller swings.
Mine are basically like I'm with a group of friends and we're figuring out what we should do. And I'm like, hey, man, like, let's go to this thing and do this thing and whatever. And then like 3 or 4 of them are like, nah, we should just go do this instead. And your idea is stupid. And I'm like, all right, screw you guys. You can figure it all out.
Yes.
You don't want my input anymore? Fine.
That's
okay,
definitely
bye.
A swing thing.
I'll just sit here. I'll follow you guys. I don't need to be in front anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's like that's what I do most often, probably.
Sanguines in their healthy state are almost like cholerics in their productivity. They're as productive and as effective as leaders.
That's something to aspire to.
Yeah.
When you're talking about cholerics and productivity.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to people that struggle with pride?
Oh, God, we all struggle with pride. So if you're listening and that doesn't really apply to me, chances are you have a lot of pride. So I think we can all eat
I don't
a
have pride.
slice of humble pie and shut our mouths a little bit.
Ooh, it's the season for pie, by the way.
I like pie that comes out like right at the end of the summer, like peach or berries or like something like that. I'm not a pumpkin person at all. I hate pumpkin. I hate pumpkin everything. Don't send me a picture of your pumpkin spice latte because I will give it a thumbs down. Sorry.
You're making many basic white girls very upset.
I know. I'm sorry, but I just can't. Pride and shame are two sides of the same coin. So if you're struggling with pride, if you look a little deeper, you're prideful as out of a fear that you're insignificant or you're not enough underneath. So that's the thing that needs to get fixed. The feeling of not being enough, the feeling of not having significance. But I also think that people who are very productive at stuff, like I'm a very confident and self-assured person. It's not a lot of times where I'm like, oh, I'm so worried because I really suck at that thing. But that's because I've learned how to like come into myself and own who I am. But that doesn't mean that I don't have weaknesses. I'm just not as insecure about my weaknesses because I've accepted them about myself. And I think if we are trying to put on a show for the world, we're going to be prideful because we want people to think we're better than we are. But if you're successful and you're doing things really well and you think that you're doing it in your own power, well, I assure you that at some point God is going to humble you and it's going to hurt. So you may as well do it now. When I start to get prideful, I remember that without Jesus, I'm a jerk. I'm a horrible person. And that it's only the blood of Jesus. It's only the cross. It's only the grace that he's extended to me that makes me effective in the things that I'm doing. He's called me to these things. He's the one that empowers me. He's the one that gives me the words and the vision. And sometimes I miss it and sometimes I make mistakes. But all of the good things in my life are because of him. And all the bad things in my life are because of me. And when I make that a core value, and that is not a self-deprecating thing because I think I'm incredible. I don't have a problem.
You're pretty awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate
You're
that.
a great person.
And now, because I don't struggle with shame and pride as much, I can receive that and believe it. Right?
That's a thing. A lot of people that struggle with receiving that kind of thing.
Right. It's false humility, which is pride in itself because it's anytime you're thinking of yourself. Right? Whether you're putting yourself down or building yourself up, it's still self. So you're still thinking about me instead of taking your eyes off yourself and thinking about someone else. And I think that's the process of becoming more healthy. Getting rid of pride is one of the first steps. Because for me to lay my life before the Lord and say, look, God, I'm super broken. I need you to fix it, takes humility. Prideful people won't even admit that often.
Did you get your hair done again?
No.
Didn't you have a color in there that you weren't a fan of?
Yeah, it's there.
Oh, it's hiding in there?
Yeah, I actually put a glaze in it so it lightened it up a little bit, but it's still there. It's just pushed back with the headphones.
Looks great.
Thanks, Ross.
Favorite pie?
I guess we kind of just talked about it.
But if you had to pick one, like if you could only have one kind of pie for the rest of your
my
life.
life. I don't know that I've eaten so much pie in my life that I know the answer to that, but I would say probably like peach or...
Have you had a peach cherry pie?
Oh, I would definitely eat that.
It is delicious.
I don't really like cherry pie, though, because I don't like the corn syrupy, like thick. It's kind of gross.
I'd say if I had to pick
apple,
one pie.
I love apple.
My one pie that I would pick is apple pie.
I love apple, but I have to make it because I make the best apple pie.
My dad makes apple pie from scratch. I forget how many years ago it was at this point. When Nicole and I first started dating, we went to my dad's or my uncle's house, my dad's brother, for Thanksgiving. And my dad made everything.
From scratch.
From
You
scratch.
have to.
And my dad, and I say everything like the appetizers, entrees, and dessert.
Yes.
And my dad owns a used car dealership. He had a van. He literally brought all the trays, laid them in the van, and then transported them to my uncle's house and put them on sternos. But he made like 4 pies.
Oh my gosh.
From scratch. My dad was a madman. Still is.
Choleric?
Yes. And he did that. Everything was great. But the one thing, I've watched him make apple pie before, and I've said this to people before who make apple pies, and they look at me like I got 5 heads when I said that I saw him do this. But he puts like 1 or 2 or a few pears in his apple pie.
Oh my gosh, that sounds great.
To add like a different layer, sometimes of like a tartness or like a different type of sweetness, I guess. But I've seen him do that. And maybe I made that up, but I swear I feel like I've seen him do that. And my dad's pies were delicious.
So most people use like Macintosh apples when they make pie. I use Granny Smith's because I like
that
the
too.
tartness.
You give that extra tartness in there, and it's obviously going to get super sweet by itself anyways when you're baking it with all the other stuff. Do you like a regular crust on top, or do you do the lattice?
I can't do the lattice.
My dad has done the lattice.
Your dad is better than me. I'm not a big baker. I love to cook, but I don't.
My dad doesn't cook a whole lot, but when he does, he goes all out.
I don't do a lot of baking. I really don't. I don't, because baking is a science. You have to do like exact measurements, and
I feel like my
cooking
dad doesn't
is
measure.
an art.
I feel like my dad just wings it. My dad's the kind of guy who wings it a lot of times.
You have to understand baking to be able to wing it, though, because there's
saying with
actually
anything,
like a physical reaction, like baking soda,
Yeah.
and baking what makes it rise, and how long do you have to proof it? And I'm like,
But I'm saying like, I mean, relative to food, my dad has made like roast beefs from scratch. Oh, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not much that goes into it, but my dad's made Chicago deep dish pizza from scratch.
Yeah.
Like the dough and the cheese. And he'll go get the fresh mutts, obviously, but then
But you can. That's easy.
he also fixes cars. I'm saying he'll be like, all right, we got to fix this. And he's like, I think we could just do this and we'll fix it.
So he's
And then,
he's
like,
creative,
And then it doesn't work. And he's like, all right, well, let's try this instead. But like, he's very headstrong about it. So I used to work for him, and he's very like, we're going to get it done. Doesn't matter how we're getting it done. We're getting it done.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm like, we should get it done right. So like, let's think about this a little bit. Maybe we have to order this part or like whatever. He's like, no, we're going to fix it right now. Like, get out of the way then. Like, that's the kind of guy my dad
Love
is.
that.
Very funny. Cake or pie?
Ooh. I guess it depends on what kind of cake it is, because I don't like regular. Regular cake is like
Ice
meh.
cream cake is cake.
I don't like ice cream cake. I don't really like ice cream. I'm gonna be
No.
honest. I can do it once in a while, but it has to be like a special flavor.
Okay.
Like I'm not like, let's go get a pint of ice cream and watch a movie. I'm like,
I am.
no, I don't need it. But cake or pie, cake, especially chocolate. Something with chocolate with some like.
You like a
ganache
double
in the
chocolate
middle.
person?
Mm-hmm.
It's my stepdad. We go to a restaurant. We're going out for his birthday tonight.
Ooh, where?
110.
I've heard mixed reviews. I've really wanted to go. I haven't
I
tried
have
it yet.
also, but it's Scotto Brothers from what I understand.
Yeah, it is.
And we've been to like all their restaurants.
Although, have you been to? It's not One North anymore, but it was until before quarantine.
They did.
I hated it.
I don't remember what they said about
I loved the dessert, but my food. I mean, it's a Mediterranean restaurant.
Right.
My fish was not good. Like, how do you mess up fish in a Mediterranean restaurant?
I don't know. My parents, my mom and stepdad they're very easy to please with restaurants.
I'm not.
My mom doesn't eat anything, so it's like a filet mignon with mashed potatoes or something. It's kind of hard to mess that up.
Mm-hmm.
And then my stepdad eats everything. And he sometimes gets like obscure things that I wouldn't normally order at some place. And he's like, oh, this was good. And I'm like, okay, like, what about if we tried like the actual food though? And so like, I'm like, they're like, oh, we went to such and such place and it was great. And I'm like, me and Nicole went and it sucked. So like, I don't really trust their intuition with that kind of stuff, but we'll see. Tonight we're going out for his birthday.
Cool.
So yeah, but he's the kind of guy who like when they're like, oh, what do you have for dessert? And they're going through the desserts and they say,
chocolate.
We have 7-layer chocolate cake. He's like, I'll take that. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you
No.
put extra chocolate on it with a side of ice cream? Okay, great.
Right. Well, I actually will order flourless chocolate cake or
Which is
chocolate mousse if they're
good.
on the menu
Yeah.
anywhere. Not a lot of places make chocolate mousse anymore, which it's amazing.
Weird.
Um,
I like chocolate mousse with shaved chocolate on
oh,
it. Like when they put the chocolate
yeah,
shavings on it.
yeah. But I also love like a good gourmet donut on a menu, like some kind of really
Like it
cool donut.
From Insignia or Blackstones?
They had one at One North. That's what I ordered when I went to
okay.
One North. But the food sucked so bad. I just can't like.
If you get it from Insignia or Blackstones, the donut, it's 2 fresh donuts
Mm-hmm,
with raspberry drizzle and white chocolate shavings.
This one
and
was like
ice cream.
it was like dipped in caramel and like all like.
Was it good?
I don't remember what it was. It was really good.
Okay.
It was really good. But they gave you 2, which I was with one other person, and we probably could have shared one donut.
Yeah, no, I get one for myself. I have a problem sharing food.
I don't.
Might be some traumatic experience deep in there. But anyways, no, I think it's just because I really love food.
Mm-hmm.
I love food.
Yeah.
All right, serious question. Favorite book?
Oh.
I mean, it's hard to say that, really.
You know what I loved?
Most life-changing book.
I loved, let me give you a favorite. I loved The Power of Habit. I think it's by Charles Duhigg.
I feel like I have it. I have a whole bookshelf of books, and I've read 10% of them.
It just was so, like, mind-blowing in teaching me how we create habits and how the mind works and how systems are created and stuff. I really liked that book. Like, I read it. I think it was on the New York Times bestseller list in like 2004, and I read it the year it came out, and I'm still talking about it. So it was good.
Have you read The Compound Effect?
Mm-mm.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's along a similar vein, but it talks about not only habits compounding over time, but basically anything compounding over time will lead to exponential results.
Yeah, yeah.
And he uses he's first of all, I forget who the freaking author is. I've read a few of his books. I can't think of it. I follow him on Instagram. But he gives a lot of visual metaphors that very accurately and helpfully describe how compounding 1 degree can radically change something. So, and literally 1 degree, like if a plane's going from, California to somewhere in Europe, and they were 1 degree to the right,
They'd wind up in Africa.
literally,
Yeah.
like that 1 degree compounding over 10,000 miles or whatever
Right.
will radically change the trajectory. So he goes through things like that, and comparing the guy who eats an apple for snack every day for 3 years versus the guy who has a bag of chips every day for 3 years. That 200 calorie difference compounded over 3 years is tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of calories.
And like how many pounds?
And
yeah.
so it's actually very good book. I've read it a couple times, but I forget the freaking author. It's bothering me because he's very good. I like the way he writes, and I can't think of it. I want to shout him out, but I can't remember his name.
So I do have a few other books that I love. They're all Christian books. So if you're not into that kind of thing, don't buy them. Culture of Honor by Danny Silk. One of the best books I've ever read. Actually healed my heart a lot because it showed me a different way to do church and to do community. And he also has a book called Unpunishable that's really great, and a book called Keep Your Love On that I recommend every couple reads. And then The Supernatural Ways of Royalty by Chris Valadin. That's a remarkable book about identity. So if what we were talking about, identity resonated with you and you believe in Jesus, pick up that book. And he also wrote a book about, it's called Spirit Wars. Don't get that book unless you're into learning about the spiritual realm, but it's super good.
I don't know why, but it just made me think of Chazon.
Yeah.
Chazon.
Uh-huh.
I really enjoyed that book.
Yeah.
And it's obviously a deeply spiritual book, but I really enjoyed that book.
Yeah.
And also,
I didn't enjoy it because it was so practical. Afterwards, I was like, you just gave me a lot of work to do that hurts my brain, and now I don't really want to read you anymore.
Yeah.
But
really
I did
good,
it,
though.
and I read it.
I like the whole outside stuff that came with reading it.
Yeah.
Like you take the Chazon test and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff is fun to me. One of my favorite books I tell everybody is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
One of the first book that ever changed my life because it changed how I thought about everything.
You know what I also would highly recommend people read? Now, C.S. Lewis is brilliant, one of the most brilliant Christian minds of, I don't know, the last 200 years, but he wrote a book, he wrote the Chronicles of Narnia series, right? Which I think everybody should read. But
is the book better than the movie?
Oh my
Obviously.
God, yes. Oh my gosh.
It's
like
never,
that's
it's
not
never
even a
not
comparison.
been true. It's never not been true for anything.
No. But he wrote a book called The Screw Tape Letters.
Yes.
And I read it when I was like 13, I think.
Chris Crow, my barber, he read those.
Yeah.
And then we talked about it. Yeah.
So the Screw Tape Letters, if you guys didn't already hear that episode, is fictional, and it's written between two demons, telling the older one telling the younger one how to fool and trick people. And it really helps you understand how the devil works and how he manipulates us and how he gets us to submit our own desires to him and stuff like that. It's really good.
He read that, Chris Crow read that the same time, or around the same time probably, that I read Outwitting the Devil, because Outwitting the Devil is similar in the vein of it's a guy who's firm in his identity and who he is and where he's going, so the devil's influence can't influence him.
Right.
So the devil's like, all right, you want to ask me a question? No matter what I say, it's not going to work on you anyway, so I'll answer your questions.
Right.
So he starts questioning the quote-unquote devil. And I say quote unquote because it's not really a spiritual book. You don't have to be. I wasn't a Christian when I read it.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, anyone could read it. Everyone believes in a positive and negative force or the universe, whatever. But he's basically like, all right, why does this happen? Why does this happen? Why does this? And the devil's like, oh, I do that so people feel this way and blah blah blah, and I do that because people. He talks about politics. He talks about education. He talks about relationships. He talks about business, everything, government, everything. And the craziest part, the part that blew my mind, is I read that book in probably like the 2012, 2013, around there. And it was originally written, I think, in the late 30s, early 40s or something like that, but it wasn't published until 2011, I think. Because his wife wouldn't let him publish it because she's like, people are going to think we're freaking crazy. You're trying to be the successful businessman, which he had failed in multiple businesses, 5, 6, 7, 8 businesses at that time. She's like, if you write a book about how you had a conversation with the devil, people won't take you seriously. We won't be successful. So he listened to her and never published it. And then he passed away. And then I think it was something like his nephew got a hold of the transcript and he published it in 2011. Or great nephew, I don't know, family member. But very, very good book. And he talks about, similar vein to things we've been saying, the devil was ultimately saying, like, I don't have to make you an evil person or convince you to do evil things for me to be winning.
I just have to distract you from who you are.
If I distract you from who you are, if you become what he says in the book a lot, a drifter, someone who doesn't know the exact trajectory of their life, you don't know where you're going. Napoleon Hill likes to say chief definite aim. If you don't have a chief definite aim of where you're going and what you're doing and what your goals are, the enemy's winning.
Mm-hmm.
Because all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing.
Right.
That's some Edmund Burke, I think, said that in 1700. But that's a quote that's always stuck out to me. And then I read that, and then I read that book, and then I was like, wow, this all makes so much sense. Oh, hey, Kilo dog.
Hey, buddy. Oh, he's so cute.
Yep.
Oh.
All right. So, favorite carbs?
Oh, that's so hard. Probably something in the Italian range.
I knew that.
Probably pasta.
Pasta? Favorite pasta?
I don't have I can't decide a favorite pasta.
Okay.
I like
Nicole's is angel hair.
Oh no, hate angel hair. Hate it. I love spaghetti. Like a good thick cut spaghetti is amazing.
What about fettuccine or linguine?
Love it. Love it. I also love fusilli or anything curly.
Tortellini?
I don't love the stuffed pastas.
Kilo, go lay down. Sit. Do something. Come on, man. We're finishing this up, all right? But, yeah. I don't know if I had to pick one. I don't know. I like any. I've never been upset with a homemade pasta. Like when you go to a restaurant and they make their own pasta
I don't like
fresh.
homemade pasta. I like dry pasta better. Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
it's not that I don't like it. I just prefer dry pasta. And often, I've actually talked to a lot of chefs that say the same thing, that they prefer the taste of dry pasta.
I like the texture of
See,
fresh
I don't.
pasta.
I don't like it as much. I do love rigatoni also. Like if I'm gonna
Stuffed rigatoni.
I'm
You don't like things inside other things?
I don't know that I need
Raviolis.
I don't need a
tortellini.
ravioli. I don't need that. I might eat a stuffed rigatoni here and there, but I really don't need stuffed pasta that much.
I love stuff. I mean, I barely eat it, but I love it.
I'm gonna go eat it today. Now, after that,
I'm going to 110. I'll meet you there. Favorite movies?
eh,
Not a movie person.
not super a movie person. I'll watch them. Wedding Crashers was pretty good.
Wow. You like Vince Vaughn? I love Vince Vaughn.
He's pretty funny. I
And-
just
and I like Owen
really
Wilson
funny.
also.
I loved the Bad Boys movies. I like when stuff blows up.
Wow.
Like, I don't know. I'm just not like. I'm definitely not oh, that movie was so moving and the use of imagery, and I'm never
Oh,
that person.
I am a cinephile.
Well, that sounds much worse than it is. But
Oh, okay.
I am not that person. And in fact,
Well, it's just by the way, just to put it out there, file is that's just the category. You could say
Yep.
like people who buy these headphones are audiophile. This is audiophile headphones.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying.
I know it just doesn't sound good to me. I like and dislike words according to how they sound to me. Like I have a whole list of words I hate.
I bet I know one.
Don't say it.
Okay. Everyone knows the one that women don't like for some reason.
But I like movies where stuff blows up. I love the Jason Bourne series.
Great.
I like spy movies.
Mission Impossible?
Nah, I don't really
like
like Tom Cruise.
Yeah, knew that. Saw that coming.
Yeah,
I don't know why. People just love him or hate him.
he's just cheesy.
Like my dad hates Will Ferrell.
I can see that. I think he's funny.
I think he's funny.
Ma, the meatloaf.
I don't think all his movies are funny, but I think that's why movies are great. You can have a good movie or a bad movie. There are people who love really bad movies.
I liked Elf.
Elf, yeah,
I
it's
liked
like
his.
a classic.
I liked his character in Wedding Crashers.
Like there's a few movies that I really can't. I'm trying to think of them, but like people are like, oh my gosh, this movie's so good, and I'm like, that movie,
Like Old School.
I hate it.
Old School.
I didn't like that movie.
No. Meh.
Very controversial to say this right now. I didn't like Anchorman.
Okay, I can see that. Actually, I walked out of the theater the first time I saw it.
And people love it.
But the second time I saw it, it caught on a little bit. But I wouldn't say I love it. It's very, I don't know,
Yeah.
very weird humor.
But you like stupid funny movies.
I like stupid funny movies. I like when stuff blows up.
So
I
I'm
like.
gonna throw this out there. Anthony's friend Jordan. I always forget his last name. Van something. He was on one of Anthony's podcasts. Anthony's known him since like elementary school. He's now a writer and producer. He one of his first bigger movies was a movie called The Binge, and it's on Hulu right now.
Mm-hmm.
Hulu exclusive film starring Vince Vaughn.
Oh.
And they filmed it upstate in Syracuse, and they make like Long Island jokes in it
Oh.
that you
I'll watch
wouldn't
it.
catch on sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like a stupid funny take on The Purge.
Oh.
So it's The Binge,
Mm-hmm.
and once a year,
That's funny.
once a year, all drugs, alcohol, all those laws go out the window.
Mm-hmm.
So once a year, so it follows a group of high school kids who are like they're all gonna drink for the first time, but it's like do drugs and everything for the first time, and people are like, oh, it's your first binge, bro. Like it's like a stupid funny movie, and Vince Vaughn is the principal.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
the main teenage lead has a crush on Vince Vaughn's daughter.
Oh, that's awesome.
So they're like, oh, they're trying to party and binge, but like his dad's her dad's the principal, and he's like watching like a hawk kind of thing. Very, very funny. And the same guy, Jordan, the writer who's made that movie, got the rights to relaunch Animaniacs.
I don't
You ever
even know
watch
what
that?
that is.
Some people that are listening will know. We're the Animaniacs. Da-da-da-da.
Oh, I
Anyways.
think I've heard it before. I didn't watch a lot of cartoons or anything like that when I was
But
growing
that's
up.
relaunching.
I
on
actually
Hulu.
wasn't allowed to watch TV except for like 2 hours on Saturdays.
I was allowed to watch TV, but I could only watch channel 31, 32, and 33, which were Disney Channel, Cartoon Network, and Nickelodeon. And after a certain time, couldn't watch Cartoon Network.
Couldn't watch
became as
Nick at
Adult
Night.
Swim, and I
Oh.
couldn't watch Nick at Night.
Yeah.
And I would, and I'd watch like George Lopez on Nick at Night and like the Cosby Show or whatever, and like I would stay in my room with my remote in my hand
on the thing.
last button,
So you could
and
change
I would
it.
hear my mom coming. Last Disney Channel, Disney Channel. I'm watching Disney Channel. Yeah, my mom was strict with that kind of stuff. It was weird. So yeah, moving on. Next question: favorite hot beverage around the holidays?
Oh. I mean, I almost always drink black coffee, but I like a flat white. I don't really drink sweet coffees. I don't like them.
I don't drink coffee in general, but I will enjoy a peppermint mocha or like a praline.
Like the
thing.
idea of having like a sweet, syrupy, sugary drink in my mouth makes me want to vom.
Ooh.
It's gross.
I also love peppermint everything, though.
I'll eat like a peppermint brownie, but I don't want it in my. I don't want a peppermint
Never
brownie
had a
in my
peppermint
liquid.
brownie.
Yeah.
Have you had a peppermint brownie?
Yeah, they're delicious.
Speaking of weird brownies, I had a science project one time where we had to do as oceanography class in high school, and we had to pick a weird sea creature and do a project on it, and we had the option to make an adjacent meal or food dish to go with the project, or make like a PowerPoint.
Obviously,
I'm gonna make
you're
something.
Yeah.
I had the lion's mane jellyfish, which is the largest jellyfish in the world. They're like 100 feet long, like massive, scary sized jellyfish. And it was actually my mom's idea. I don't even know where she got it from, but you pour the brownie mix into the pan, and then you get like a really good whatever kind of jelly, strawberry, jelly, grape, whatever, and you swirl it into the brownie mix, and you have like these jelly brownies.
Sounds amazing.
Phenomenal.
Sounds
I recommend anyone to do it. Unbelievable. I did it again after the fact too, because I was like, these are just so good. I have to do it. I should have asked this question earlier since we're now joking around, but things to discuss with a partner before marriage.
Oh my God, so many things.
Do you have to be out of here at any time?
I don't. What time is it?
I don't know. That clock's not right. It says it's 2:30, and I know that's not right. It's 1:30.
It's 1:30 already?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I do have to be out of here at some point. So I think people have to have complementary values. Now, we don't all have to have the same interests and values and stuff like that, but if you're a Christian and you marry somebody that doesn't want to go to church with you, it may not seem like a big deal now, but it will be 5 years from now, 10 years from now when you have children. Having the same values, asking about people's perspective on money, right? You don't want to wind up married to somebody that doesn't know how to save their money or has bad money habits and not know it until after the wedding. Children. So many people get married without talking about whether or not they want children. Like, what? That's crazy to me. Dreams, right? Like, so what if I want to be a missionary and travel the world and somebody that I'm marrying doesn't want anything to do with that? I have to be really sure that they're going to want to support my dreams or the vision for my life. And some people don't want to be separated. I mean, I remember having a phone date with someone before I even agreed to go out in person with them. I was set up by someone. And he's like, "Oh, you're a pastor? That's like a really involved job." I'm like, "Okay, we're not a good fit because whatever you're saying already makes me feel pressure about what I do for a living or what I do with my life. So that's not a good fit, but nice to meet you. Good luck on your journey, you know?" So you have to know that if you know what you're called to do, you have to know that the other person is at least, they don't have to do it with you, but they're at least going to support you in it and be a cheerleader for you. And they're not going to give you a hard time for doing what you're meant to do. And a lot of people get married because they feel like it's the next step and not because they've found a person that fits with them well.
That's a good answer. That's all I got, though.
Okay, cool.
Any other food things you want to talk about? I'm always down.
I just found out there's a place called, I forgot what it's called. I'll have to get back to you on that. But it's this space that every few months, a new up-and-coming chef goes in and takes it over for a few months. It's in the city.
It sounds cool.
I want to go to it so badly. I don't know what's happening right now with COVID, but as soon as I know it's a go, I'm all about it. And then they move on and like hopefully get sponsored by someone to open their own restaurant and stuff like that. Isn't that
cool.
awesome?
That's cool.
Yeah. And it's all different kinds of food.
I love food.
Did you ever watch the show Somebody Feed Phil? Okay. It's on Netflix. And it's the guy who wrote or co-wrote Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh, okay.
And he's like a foodie, and he travels, or he kind of similar to Anthony Bourdain. He travels around the world, gets the culture. Not as serious as Anthony Bourdain, though. And he like goes to all these really cool places and eats all these really cool things. And he ate in this restaurant, and I was like, I have to go there. So,
I'm down for that.
Yeah, I wrote to my sister what it's called so that I would remember.
Did you hear me and Peter talking about Michelin stars?
Yeah.
And all
Oh,
this
yes.
stuff?
There's a Michelin star Mexican restaurant in Long Island City that I've always wanted to go to. Mm-hmm.
Never. I don't think. I mean, I don't know. I haven't heard of too many, but a Michelin star Mexican restaurant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Got to be some good tortillas.
Word. They're probably grinding the corn themselves on one of those things with the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We have to play rock paper scissors.
Okay.
Best 2 out of 3.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, shoot.
Okay.
Okay, ready?
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3, shoot.
Oh.
1, 2, 3, shoot. 1, 2, 3, shoot. 1, 2, 3, shoot. 1, 2, 3, shoot. We've done the same thing in a row, the same sign 4 times in a row. 1, 2, 3, shoot. All right, you win. Again.
Yay!
7 episodes, I think I've won 1.
Oh, man, that's not good odds, bro.
Yeah, I keep saying I want to look into like the psychology behind doing rock, paper, scissors so I can just like pwn everyone that comes on here.
You should.
But I haven't. So yeah, so that's it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Thanks
this is
for
awesome.
coming on. Your time is precious, and people pay money to have your time.
They
so
do.
I'm glad this is free.
Thanks. If you wanted to hear something funny,
Sure.
I'm in the market to buy a couch and got into a long conversation with the guy at one of the furniture stores I went to. And he's like, I'm just really enjoying this. This is a really refreshing conversation. I said, yeah, man, people pay me for this most of the time. So let's get to the couch stuff.
We went to Ashley Outlet.
I heard.
Yeah, and we got a pretty nice couch it was $800.
That's awesome.
Which the non-outlet price
is probably like 18.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it was that expensive. The guy told us what it was, but he said because it's like this style couch or version couch, whatever. This came out 3 seasons ago or whatever. That's why it's at the outlet store.
Oh, I see.
But I mean,
who cares?
Yeah, who cares?
Uh-huh.
And then they delivered it and assembled it.
That's amazing.
And did everything.
Amazing.
Which was really nice. That was unexpected.
Amazing.
I was going to say something else. Oh, yes. Plug stuff.
Oh. You can find me on Instagram at Kiele Hauser, KIELE HAUSER. Or you can find me at eisolutions.co. Or you can find me on the live stream for V1 Church very often. V1.church is our website. If you want to tune into one of our services, you can do that on the website. You can do that on YouTube, and you can do that on Facebook. We have services every hour starting at 9 a.m. every Sunday. And if you want to get to know our pastors a little bit, Pastor Mike Signorelli does a live at lunch Monday through Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. You could tune into that too.
When's your book come out?
You know what? I am next year probably starting to write one.
Nice.
Yeah.
I knew you weren't writing one, but I had to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Because I think it'll be great.
Well,
Whatever
when I
it turns
do,
out
I'll
to be.
come back on and we'll talk about
We
it.
can talk about it, and then you could plug your book then.
Cool. Sounds good.
What's the title?
I don't know.
It has to be something with house in it.
I have 6. Oh, that would be funny.
I have 6 different topics I want to write about, so I just have to figure out which one is the one.
Why not all of them? Oh, you want to break it up into like a series of books?
Like a book, just one. All of them are whole books, topics.
Worth of topics.
Mm-hmm.
Write 6 books?
Well, I will. I have to start with one, though, Ross.
Are you the kind of person who you think you'll actually sit down at a typewriter and write it yourself, or do?
Yeah, I'll
Anthony
write it
did?
myself. No, I'll write it myself, and I'll write it myself because I have a prophetic word about writing books, and it specifically implies that I have to write it myself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
If I were to ever write a book, I would do exactly what Anthony did.
Pay someone to ghostwrite it.
Where he literally just recorded it for like a whole day. He was like, all right, and then this next chapter is going to be this, that, the third. This is my thought.
And
This,
just
that, the
sent
third.
it to someone.
Sent it to a ghostwriter, and they just put his thoughts on paper.
Wow.
And they sent it back to him. They're like, oh, what do you think? And he was
Bill
like, wow.
Hoffman's was ghostwritten as well. Ghostwritten as well.
Yeah, no. I enjoy writing, but not a lot.
We'll see. Let's figure out what it is first, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks.
And thanks for listening. And we'll catch you on the flip side.
Bye.
Bye.